Again, there's no correlation. This just goes off to left field. So keep that in mind when you hear someone arguing against, especially when it comes to the freedoms of either minorities or people of certain, I guess, religions and sexuality and whatever. When people start arguing against these certain freedoms, you have to ask, well, why? Why is this such a thing to you? How will this ultimately affect you? So incest and bigamy, I'm like, how are you getting that far? Okay, so just keep that in mind, these slippery slope arguments that, people like to make. And it happens, I get it, there's fear behind it, but it's also a case where you have to say, that's wrong, sir, or ma'am, or whoever, okay? My favorite one also here, we got Dilbert. Another slippery slope where his boss is like, I have to reject your proposal. And Dilbert's like, is there any particular reason at this time? And the boss goes on to say, well, at my level, of management, I don't have the authority to approve anything important, but I do have the authority to reject things. And he's like, if I don't reject proposals, and then there's nothing for me to do. And if there's nothing for me to do, I'll get fired and I might not get another job, and then I'll starve to death. So I have to reject everything you turn in, otherwise I'll die. What? Okay, and then the guy's, Dilbert's like, what am I supposed to do now? And his boss is like, can you rephrase that question in the form of a proposal? So, little ding at the end there. Okay, so slippery slope occurs when a serious consequences of potential action or policy are predicted and not substantiated by any evidence whatsoever. It's just like, this is going to happen. How? That makes no sense. Where are you coming up with this? Okay, show me the data. Show me the data. Okay, for an example, and I actually had a friend that I work with make this statement that I'm like, what? And they go, first we're self-quarantined. Next thing you know, we'll be martial lawed. And then next we're going to end up with chips in our arms and monitored daily. Ladies and gentlemen, you are monitored daily anyway. And you want to know why? Your cell phone. All right, your cell phone is monitoring everything you do, your computer. We don't need chips in our arms. We got them in our back pocket. That's a phone. That's supposed to be a phone right there. Okay. That always cracks me up. And like, we're already there we've been doing this for a long time. Okay. So then my friend is like, it's the end of times. Everything is going to be changed. We're screwed. I'm like, darling, where are you? Okay. So just because we have to wear a mask or we have to self-quarantine became this huge thing of like the end of the world. No, that's not the case. We're actually trying to get out of this situation. So calm it down, just chill. That was a very wild, slippery slope you went down. Okay. All right, so take a few minutes and consider maybe a current slippery slope fallacy that you've heard through either social media, friends, family, politicians. I see it through family all the time. We talk about this because you guys know my stuff. All right, so what are you hearing and seeing? And what are these things that are standing out to you like, that escalated quickly, right? We see that often. Okay, so now we are going to work on straw man. So strawman fallacy sets up a weak or a negative argument and claims that it is held up by an opponent consciously misrepresenting the opponent's views to make them easier to attack. Okay, and I'll give you an example because that's kind of a mouthful right there. So the president wants the U.S. to have a health care program that is like those countries of socialists. Okay, and I will always stand against socialism taking over our country. Okay, so the idea here is they're trying to misrepresent the opponent's views so that they can make it easier to attack. Does that make sense? So they're saying that this president or whatever wants to make a health care program that becomes socialist. And it's like, what? Where's that coming from? I will always stand against socialists. It's like, hold on, wait up. That's you misrepresenting what your opponent is trying to say. So go through, we got a couple comics. One of these particular memes or comics that actually stands out to me is why is Narcan free to a dope addict, but my insulin is $750 a month? First of all, you're attacking an opponent that shouldn't even be your opponent, right? So this other person with an issue, who needs Narcan because of their addiction, that absolutely has nothing to do with you getting insulin for $750 a month. The argument should be, why is your insulin $750 a month? You shouldn't be throwing in an opponent in there because that's a straw man. That's not really even creating an argument. Just the main issue at hand is, why is it at $750 a month? Okay. All right. Let's go down. So I like the Calvin and Hobbes one where, he's asking his dad to get his gutter out of the ball. And his dad is like, this is the third time this afternoon I've had to do this. I thought I told you to go play out in the back. And of course, Calvin being Calvin argues, relax, Dad. It's just a ball in the gutter. It's not as if I've been embezzling money or killing people. Aren't you glad I'm not stealing and murdering? Right? So he's using the Strawman Effect to make his point. Okay, so a straw man is a fallacy in which an opponent's argument, it's distorted, okay, and it's exaggerated to seem so that they can be more easily attacked, right? So, with Calvin going at his dad, he switches the dialogue around and be like, oh, it's not like I'm embezzling, Dad. And he's arguing and creating this situation where it's as if his dad attacked him, unrighteously or something, which isn't the case. He's like, just stop. Put your ball up on the roof. Go in the back like I told you. And Calvin turns that against him. So it's like, imagine a boxer in a ring with two opponents. You have two opponents. And one of the opponent is a real live human being and you're just getting ready to fight. Okay. And the other one is made out of straw. Well, the boxer knocks out the straw man opponent, right? Not the guy he's actually fighting. He punches out this guy and declares a victory while the real opponent's just standing right there. He's like, oh, I gotcha. I was like, no, you didn't. You got that guy. Okay. So here's a really good example. AK-47s should be outlawed, all right? No one needs that much fire power to be protected. Okay, we're talking about AK-47s here. And the argument, the straw man argument to that is, my opponent is against the use of firearms for self-protection. And so she would allow criminals to possess firearms and deny their use by law-abiding citizens. We're not talking about all guns. We're just talking about AK-47s. You don't need an AK-47, okay? All right, that's just kind of, not all guns, not all guns are as brutal as an AK-47. This is the argument here. So this is where the straw man comes in, where it's, it's misrepresenting the statement here. Okay, all right. Hasty conclusions, which I also like to call hasty generalizations, and we do this often, where we presume that a general principle is applicable to every case, okay? Since a Doberman pinscher bit you when you were a kid, you claim that all Doberman pinschers bite, okay? Because of the one, you assume the whole, and that is a hasty generalization. And our comics here, or our memes, the two weightlifters I've met both took steroids. Therefore, all weightlifters take steroids. Okay, right? So, hasty generalization. Like using Axe spray. You've seen that. One guy uses it and he gets all these girls. The assumption is anyone who uses Axe spray is going to get all the girls. I don't even like the smell of Axe spray, so I don't know. Maybe. Okay. The assumption that all men in animation are drawn this way and women are drawn this way. Not all women are actually drawn that way, but there are some comic books in which they are. Okay, so it's one assumes the whole. And then my favorite is where you sit in a classroom or a seminar, and the joke is if you're in the front row, you're a teacher's pet. If you're in the back row, you're too cool for school. If you're against the wall, you're sensitive. So there's like all these little generalizations of the type of people who sit in a classroom, which is not always the case. Sometimes you sit where you sit because for whatever reason, it doesn't have to do with who you are necessarily as a student. Okay, maybe sit up the front because you can't see. My husband does that. He sits up in the front like when he was in class. He's blind as a bat. Babe, get glasses, man. Okay, so hasty conclusions and generalizations are generalizations that are drawn from just a small and inadequate sample of information. Remember, we talked about samples. All right, a hasty generalization is this small amount assumes the whole, and that's inaccurate. Okay, so again, one assumes the whole, totally not the case. All right, you assume because one Republican or one Democrat did a thing, whether you believe in it or not, you assume that all are that way. So say one of these politicians who is of either did something that you're like, oh, that's just the worst. Why would you do that? You assume that anyone who is of that said political party is going to be doing the same thing. Okay. So it's kind of like when people take a stand or claim based on limited evidence. Okay. So keep that in mind when we think of hasty conclusions. If, one assumes the whole. And again, it's kind of also on the lines of stereotype. Okay, we talked about stereotype. But hasty generalizations, I think, does a better job of explaining that versus what you define as a stereotype. Okay, So another thing about that, when we talk about hasty generalizations, is remember the video with the rats when the scientists were each holding a rat. They were assuming this one was smart and that this one was dumb. It actually changed the ways in which the rats ran through the maze. And it's because of that that it's important that we be very careful of these hasty generalizations that we make towards people of a whatever, whether it's a political view or religion or blah blah, whatever it might be. So labels can be destructive. These generalizations can be destructive. It might become, maybe also might create someone who's overly confident, to the point where it becomes disastrous, thinking they can do a thing when they haven't had the training or the information to do it right. Hey, you're great. You can fly a plane. Yeah, you're right. Right? That's not, you have to be careful when we do these hasty generalizations. So again, self-fulfilling prophecies, where it's a process whereby an expectation becomes reality. And again, it's kind of like superstition when you think about our mindset really does set the pace for the ways in which we act, behave, the way things go. It is important not to assume that these hasty generalizations are true, and instead, remember what I said, investigate the truth. Always find out what is really behind it. So don't limit yourself to a generalization that people are making out there that you could go, oh, that's what I see. You want to make sure you go through and actually look beyond what these, again, sometimes stereotypes, they're kind of a little on par. And check the quality of the sources. Always check the quality. Where's the money coming from? Where's this information coming from? Again, when it comes from, a political point of view, if a Republican is claiming such and such about a Dem or vice versa, there's always, unfortunately, something behind that. So if people are, attacking and giving those generalizations, there's something more behind it. Okay, what is behind the information that you're getting? Okay, a lot of times it's fear. Okay, and a lot of times it's money too. Fear and money actually go hand in hand. Afraid of losing money, afraid of doing something to not get something. So keep that in mind. Okay, either or fallacy. And I remember during 9/11, there was this huge push on this either or of you're either American or you're not. Well, hold up, wait up. What do you do? What are you doing here? Okay, so we still kind of push for this. I see it all the time. You either are or you aren't. And I'll give you some examples. An either or fallacy assumes an issue has only two sides. And we know for a fact that's incredibly inaccurate. Majority of the time, there's more than one side when it comes to an argument. When in fact there's usually multiple faucets in which something is true or not. So when you hear that your friend failed a math test, which you found very easy, you say you either studied or you didn't study. You didn't study or you don't have the aptitude for math. Sorry about that. Okay. However, in actuality, maybe there's some other factors that are involved. So maybe they did study and tests just freak them out. Tests freak me out. I might know a knowledge and kind of give me a second, but when there's that pressure, I'm like, oh God, I don't know what I'm doing, even though I probably do know what I'm doing, right? So whether or not I have the aptitude or I studied doesn't have to do with the fact that I did bad on a test. There's more to that. Okay. So keep that in mind. Again, some of these memes, the United States of America, love it or leave it. Love America or leave it. Hold up, wait up. You don't have to love America. You don't have to leave America. There's a lot of in between. Though there is the one meme that says, either you love bacon or you're wrong. So for my vegan friends out there, I'm sorry, I really love bacon. But that's not to say you're wrong. So, okay. All right, and then you always see these things on Pinterest. Life is a roller coaster. You can either scream every time you hit a bump, or you can throw your hands in the air and enjoy it. Well, there's more to that. Okay, it's not an either or situation in life. Okay, all right. So false dilemma. Again, that either or fallacy is an error in reasoning that occurs when one polarizes a situation. Right? Exaggerate. Words. Anyway. I'm just going to stick with this polarization situation by presenting only two alternatives. It's either this or that. Okay, but there's usually a spectrum in between. There's always something in the middle. So on page 37 gives some really good examples. Let's get there. Okay. So 37 example, look on that, has some really good examples, but I'm going to give you a few here too. So we like to think about situations as clear cut and simple, okay? Simple solutions, they save us time. It either is or it isn't. Make it easy. In an effort to understand all the complexities of a situation. So sometimes it's too much. We don't want to think about it. It either is or it isn't. And then that's it. All right. And then our language, the way in which we speak, actually encourages this type of polarized thinking. And it includes very few words to describe something down the middle. So I'm going to give you some examples here, and I'd love you can pause me, come back in a little bit. I would love to figure out what you find for this to work. But in our dialogue, in our words, and in the ways we describe things, we have these very polarized, different, ways of describing something. Try and help me figure out what's something down the middle that we could do. So beautiful versus ugly. What is a word right down the middle that we can actually use that isn't on this beautiful side or on this ugly side? What's down the middle? Strong versus weak. Extroverted versus introverted. Happy versus sad. So there's something in the middle that should be available versus these extreme words. And we use them very, loosely, like, oh, I'm sad, or I'm so happy. But is there ever anything in the middle? No, I'm okay. That could be one. All right, you're brave, you're cowardly. I don't know. I'm indifferent. I don't know. You can think of some words and go for it. So that's hard. It's a really hard thing. Even if I'm sitting here, as much as I, can think about it, I'm like, I don't even know. I can't think of something right now. Like right off the top of my head, I'd actually have to sit and really delve down and see where is our dialogue giving us the opportunity to avoid such polarization. Okay? All right. Begging the question. I've covered this before. And again, we talk about that Huckleberry Finn being removed from schools because it'll corrupt young minds. Well, the idea here is we're using this word immoral and presenting it as if it was an established fact on whether or not we should get rid of the Huckleberry Finn book. You can go back and watch my other video on that. I don't like spending too much time again on this. You've already watched it. If you are not sure, go back and watch that video and make it a lot easier. All right, so I'm going to click through the comics really quick and get back to, again, a little bit more definition. So begging the question is a fallacy that occurs when a speaker or a writer assumes that the reader or writer assumes what needs to be proven. Okay, so when we give this information, you make an assumption from it just based on the little bit we give you. So 39 and 40 give a very good example. Again, I do a really better job on my other videos, but I'm trying to keep this lecture a little bit shorter. Okay, so it takes place in two ways. One is the speaker makes the claim and then asks you to prove that his or her claim is not correct. Okay, advertisers do this often, and one of them is, why wouldn't you call 1-800-DENTIST to get the best personal care? Why wouldn't you? They're asking you to prove this. And it's like, what? So we're begging the question. We're giving you, we're begging you this question here. So building on an unproven assumption in their argument as if it were fact, okay? So have you stopped beating your wife? That's assuming I'd be my wife. Like, what? Right? So begging the question is making an unproven assumption in their argument as if it were fact. Okay, I think those are good. Again, 39 and 40 do a much better job. Take a look at those. I'm not going to read the book for you, but I want you to really feel confident in this particular fallacy. So we're going to go into, remember the other category of fallacies that mislead. Red herring, ad hominem, two wrongs make a right, ad populum. We have appeal to tradition. That's one that I think a lot of people definitely use. And then appeal to pity and equivocation. So equivocation, again, we've talked about before, but we'll get into a little more detail. Red herring. So red herring you will probably see a lot. And red herring represents a move of desperation. It's like, ooh, look over there. Okay, it occurs when the writer changes the subject to divert the reader's attention away from the weakness of their argument. You will see this often, especially in politics. Yes, my candidate has no experience in politics, but she is the daughter of a U.S. president, and her pictures of him are so cute. You're like, oh, yeah, the pictures of them were cute. No relation to the fact that this particular politician has no experience. Okay? Calvin and Hobbes, again, go ahead and read through that one. Makes it pretty easy. And let's see, let's get through. You can read the comics on your own. I don't know. I don't like reading them. I get awkward. Okay, so we're going to go to the red herring definition and a little bit more detail here. A fallacy in which reasons offered to support conclusions lead the listener away from the issue under consideration. Again, here's the argument. Oh, we're going to come over here now. Okay. So the term actually comes from, it was a technique used to distract hunting dogs, using smoked fish, which was the red herring, to throw the dogs that were on the scent, to throw them off. So you throw a red herring out there and they smell that, completely distracts them from the point of what they were doing when they were trying to go hunting. Prisoners would do that, like when they're out running from jail. They're like, oh, don't come after me. Okay, that was their point there. All right, so kids obviously do this often, and they're usually very good at it as a defense mechanism against parental demands. So 241 and 242, they give excellent examples. A couple of them, I'm going to just give this to kind of ring it in your ears. So we have a reporter talking to the secretary, and it says, Mr. Secretary, why won't the president admit that he wrote those memos with his signature on them? And of course, the press secretary, as they do so well, why are you reporters always attacking this president and defending the opponents? Right, so that's totally ignored the question and the issue at hand and went off on some other tangent, right? So we see this all the time when it comes to press secretaries, and that's the point. They're trying to distract from the issue at hand. Some do it better than others. Some don't need to do it. Like, you'll see if ever you watch a press conference, they do press conferences now. You can always watch and see, is that press secretary being transparent, or are they doing the red herring where they're like, oh, well, what about this? And they go off onto, some other thing and blaming someone else too, right? Another one is, Senator, are you planning to run for president again? And the senator says, I am happy working as a senator and accomplishing my valuable goals for our nation. This has been a very productive season of Congress. Sir, you didn't answer the question. Okay, so be mindful of the red herring, especially when you're in an argument and you're trying to talk to someone and they kind of throw again that offhanded comment that distracts you, and you're like, oh, that's pretty, and go off over there. Always remember, what's your issue? What is the question you're asking for? And always look for that in the answer that someone's trying to give you. Okay? Ad hominem. It's an argument attacks a person rather than the issue. Okay? We see this all the time. The governor supports higher emission standards for automobiles. What else would we expect from a has-been movie star? And this sounds very much like someone arguing against Arnold Schwarzenegger. He was a movie star, obviously, and he was the governor. Okay, I don't know what crowd I'm talking to, if y'all remember that or not. Arnold Schwarzenegger was the governor of California. Okay, so anyway, they're using his character to deflect from, or to use against him. So they're attacking his quote-unquote character versus using the argument itself. So, no, your face is a logical fallacy, right? They're arguing you versus the thing itself, okay? There's another meme where there's these two kids arguing back and forth. You're a big fat liar. No, you're a big fat liar. Like, they're attacking each other, and the parent standing at the door is like, you're the one who told him he could watch the debates. Right? And so that's what you always see at a debate. They don't actually answer the question. They attack their opponent. It's really annoying. Everybody does it. It drives me crazy. Get to the point. Get to the issue. And why don't you get to the issue? Because you don't know the answer, because nobody does, right? Okay. So ad hominem, again, that's attacking the person. The Latin term means to the man or attacking the person. Ad hominem occurs when a person is attacked on a personal quality that is totally irrelevant to the issue at hand. Okay, so remember that, especially in politics. We see that a lot. If someone's trying to argue you, sometimes they'll turn around, and kind of figure out a way of attacking your character versus the issue at hand. It happens a lot. You all know when you've seen that, okay? All right, so tu quoque. All right, that is two wrongs make a right. And I'm sure many of you have partaken in this one.